Rachel.
I'm just curious for John, what's your motivation for advocating on behalf of farm?
Apart from the debate, let me very frankly just say a very quick thing about the global context for talking about meat. And may I offer an Indian example? And in India, for example, many people do not eat meat, and many people also eat meat. Now, while people who eat meat, somehow have this idea, because of various social, cultural, and religious reasons, that they are superior morally to people who eat meat. And therefore that is in India set as the pattern for human living. And communities which have traditionally eaten meat are discriminated against and are considered somehow lower in the hierarchy. And therefore, if you ask me what is my motivation, a real motivation would be that particular context in which communities which eat in a very ethical manner meat are somehow considered morally, religiously, and hierarchically lower than others who do not eat meat, and I do not buy into that distinction.
Okay, thank you. This now concludes the question portion of our debate, and we will move on to the closing remarks, starting with the opposition.
All right, thank you. Well, I do not get to have the last word. That's obvious. And that may be a good thing, maybe. I want to end this by making this closing statement, a closing question rather. And I want to just say two things. One is the problem of problem cases. What do we do with them? It's not very easy to think of particular criteria to determine what is ethical and what is not. For example, the silly example that I gave you. And also if we have three different options, 54 inches of square space, 120 square inches of space, and then a free farm in which animals are roaming freely. But I think what helps us to determine whether it is ethical or not, what actually goes on in there. And so we do not have control over what actually goes on in this free big farm. We do not have control over what is going on. We do not know how the farmer in private is treating the animals, whether they are free or whether they are in captivity. So that is the first thing that I want to say, that is the problem of problem cases. And the question that I have for us is a question that I have for PETD, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And their mascot is Sir Paul McCartney. And the question that I want to propose to us is what I want to call the question for Sir Paul McCartney. And this is what he quotes on the homepage of the PETA website. He says, if anyone wants to save the planet, all they have to do is just stop eating meat. Now, I think that's a far-fetched claim. For example, all the grain that is used to feed these animals, why can't they go into feeding the poor of the world? I think it has rhetorical value but not real value, because these grains are, as a matter of fact, dumped into the ocean to regulate oil prices. So therefore, in thinking of larger societal issues, and if we really want to save the planet as Sir Paul McCartney wants to save the planet, I think factory produced meat and stopping of the eating of such meat would not necessarily solve the problems of the world. Not that it does not in any way, but to say that it is never ethical is a different thing. And coming to the root of the problem, what do you think is the root of the problem? What do we think is the root of the problem? Why does this issue of factory farmed meat an ethical issue? Why does it suddenly become an ethical issue? If it has not been an ethical issue for the larger part of humanity's history, why has it become an ethical issue in the last, say, a few decades or even a couple of centuries? And I think, and this may be a bold claim and perhaps a little unfounded, but I am willing to say it anyway. And that, I think, is because, in Gordon Graham's famous words, is because we are disenchanted with the world. And because we are disenchanted with the world, we need something. We need something, like how Sir Paul McCartney needs, and that is to stop eating meat. And that will somehow solve the problems of the world. And I think that is a silly claim. And that is a question that I have for Paul McCartney. And if I may end with the words of Gordon Graham, what we need in opposition to this disenchantment of the world is a re-enchantment of the world. But this re-enchantment of the world does not necessarily lie in the stopping of the eating of meat, of factory-produced meat. I think it lies elsewhere, and that is the topic for yet another debate. Thank you.
No, becoming vegetarian or even cutting factory farmed meat out of your diet is far from enough to save the world. In fact, I'm pretty reformed. I think any human action is going to be pretty far from enough to save the world. But that doesn't mean, should we continue to sin? We may be free, but we should not do things that harm our brothers and sisters. I mean, not only in terms of conscience, but also in terms of physical needs, in terms of damage to the environment, which harms the lives of many, even those far away from us. Now, when you're considering to eat factory farmed meat, I think that there are six things which have to be checked off, which have to be allowed or approved of in order to do so conscionably. The first is that cruelty to animals, and we both acknowledge that there is at least some cruelty to animals inherent in the factory farming process is acceptable, or at least serving a greater goal here. Second is that my health and the health of others, even those who aren't eating factory meat, can be harmed. There is that global warming, it's being a major industry in causing global warming, isn't a moral issue, nor is pollution or the expansion of dead zones in our oceans due to overfishing. Fourth is that my eating habits may infringe on another's well-being, or perhaps not on another's right to eat at all, but certainly on another's right to eat to the extent that I choose to eat. Determination of this production of meat through factory farming is an acceptable use of societal resources. Fifth, you also have to determine that paying folks to perpetuate the system on the backs of the poor and the alien in our midst is acceptable. And the sixth is, and I feel that this is one of the most important points, even though it's one of the ones that is most overlooked in considering consumption of meat, is that this is a good way to spend disposable income. I think that instead of paying more to indulge our taste buds a little bit more, we should be giving more to our churches, giving more to charity, or at the very least, saving it for a rainy day. Perhaps something that isn't quite a popular argument, because vegetarianism in the U.S. seems to be a middle or upper class phenomenon. Anyway, but in terms of environmental impact, which is the point that I really want to drive home, reducing your meat consumption even by 20% as the average American is the equivalent in terms of production of greenhouse gases of switching from a typical car to say a Prius. So I would advise those of you who perhaps aren't willing to strike meat from your diet entirely to say, reduce your meat consumption by 50% and drive whatever car you like. Thank you.
Let's give a hand to our debaters. So thank you to you both. So to conclude tonight, for everyone who voted the first time, and only for those who voted the first time, on that same sheet of paper, put a 2, and then again, write yes, no, or abstain on the proposition, it is never ethical to eat factory farmed meat. And then Andrew will collect those pieces of paper, and please stay around and listen for the results. In the meantime, there's cookies and soda for you to partake in or to discuss this topic further with your peers. So thank you all for coming.
Do you really think it's ethical to drink factory-made soda?